when I talked about the Kaaba in Mecca and Jerusalem, or I talked about the Jewish and Christian tradition and the Arab tradition, I talked about Islam as kind of bringing those things together. And in the Islamic understanding of the prophets and their relationship to one another, Muhammad in many ways brings to a kind of completion a trajectory, a historical, sacred historical trajectory that begins with Abraham. So Abraham has two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. In the biblical tradition, Ishmael is basically sent away with his mother, Hagar, and the covenant goes through the line of Isaac and his descendants. But Abraham sends Ishmael and his mother into the wilderness, which means into the desert. Right? And Muslims, of course, believe that where Abraham sent them was Mecca. And it's believed that Abraham would visit Ishmael and Hagar in Mecca after bringing them there, and that together he and Ishmael built the Kaaba. And so there is a monotheistic Abrahamic cult of worship, form of worship, that is established in Arabia by Abraham and his son Ishmael in the Islamic tradition. At the same time that you have this other line that's established through Isaac. Islamic tradition believes that Muhammad is many generations in the future an original descendant of Ishmael. He's genealogically related to Ishmael through his tribe, Quraysh. So you have this legacy that eventually, I put it in parentheses, falls into paganism. On the other side, you have Isaac and Jacob and the tribes, the descendants of Jacob, become the Israelites. From this arises Moses and some of the other prophets, and eventually through that line also Mary and Jesus. And not necessarily in a perfect genealogical way, but certainly Islam sees Muhammad as the heir to a prophetic legacy whose important figures are Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and then with him as the fifth. So Muhammad really inherits and brings together in his person both sides of this Abrahamic legacy, the Ishmael side and the Isaac side. He brings them to conclusion. And I think it's interesting, there's a lot of parallels. The Quran often talks about Muhammad as being a follower of the Millat Ibrahim, right, of the community of Abraham. And Abraham is, of course, described in the Bible as the father of many, right? But Muhammad, the Quran says, is not the father of any of your sons. He has daughters. That's not the father of any of your sons. So there's a way in which Abraham opens a kind of cycle of sacred prophetic history that closes or comes to a kind of completion, a unified completion in Muhammad. And we're going to see why Abraham is so important. We're going to look at some of the Quranic verses that relate to that. I should also point out that while in the Jewish and Christian tradition, the foundation or the starting points of those traditions often were related to the bringing of some kind of new relationship, new development in the relationship between God and human beings, right? So either Abraham and his family being chosen as a covenant people, or Moses and the Torah. When Jesus comes again, it's a kind of new era, right? Jesus brings a new message. The scripture, the Christian part of the scripture is called the New Testament, right? He starts a new covenant. Everything is new. Right? Their claim to importance is that they bring something new and represent a new development in the divine-human relationship. In Islam, it's not like that. its claim to legitimacy is not that it brings something new, but that it restores an original. Right? So Muhammad is told to say, and this is Surah 46, verse 9, say, I am no new thing among the messengers. I'm not something new. In Surah 6, again, Muhammad is told to say, truly my Lord has guided me unto a straight path, an upright path, the creed of Abraham, a Hanif, a pure monotheist. He was not of the idolaters. So what Muhammad brings is a restoration of the original Abrahamic legacy. Right? And here, arguing with the people of the book, meaning Jews and Christians, O people of the book, why do you dispute regarding Abraham, as neither the Torah nor the gospel were sent down until after him? Do you not understand? Right? Elsewhere, the Quran says that Abraham wasn't a Jew or a Christian because he lived before those traditions were revealed. He was what? He was here, yes, here he's a Hanif, he's a monotheist, but he's also described as a Muslim. With the term Muslim meaning one who is completely submitted to the one God. Right? So Abraham, it's a rhetorical point to say he wasn't a Jew, he wasn't a Christian, he was a Muslim, but a Muslim in the sense of being a primordial monotheist, an original monotheist that didn't follow Jewish law, didn't follow Christian law, lived before those things were revealed. Okay. So we know that the Quran talks about Jewish and Christian scripture, mentions them by name, talks not only about the Torah and the Gospel, but it also mentions the Psalms. In fact, it quotes the Psalms. It was one of the only things it says, that we've written in the Psalms, the righteous shall inherit the earth. So, which is actually in one of the Psalms. So it talks about the Torah, it talks about the Gospel, it talks about the Psalms, so it talks about the scriptures of the Jewish and Christian tradition. We know that it talks about all the sacred figures, many of the sacred figures of the tradition. But it also talks about Jews and Christians themselves. It also talks about their communities, not just about their sacred figures or their sacred places or their sacred scriptures, but about them themselves. And it refers to Jews and Christians, you've probably already seen this, as the people of the book. Meaning, some people would say that this should really be translated the people of Scripture, rather than people of the book, to be clearer. Right? So this is an honorific title for Jews and Christians. Other religious traditions, some of them were even protected by Islam, for example, like Zoroastrianism. But it doesn't fall under this category. This category of people of the book is unique to Jews and Christians. Right? It honors them as people who follow scriptures revealed by the same God. Yes?
The title, O people of the book, originated with Muslims addressing the other two things. Do Muslims themselves consider themselves to be people of the book?
Yes. Yes, they would put them, they don't refer to themselves as that way because they're Muslims, but yes, this is a way of, we are all people of the book. We are all people who follow Scripture. The word for book here, kitab, is used to refer to the Gospel and the Torah, and it's also used to refer to the Quran. Quran refers to itself also as a kitab, as a book, right? So yes, it's like saying this is what we have in common. We all follow Scripture revealed by God. Yeah.
So when talking to my students and sharing with them have in common, is it safe to say people of the book for all three of them?
It's not a kind of normal way that Muslims would talk about themselves, but you could say Muslims consider all three of these, Judaism, Christianity, and of course their own religion, to be religions of the book, to be scriptural religions. But the term, when it's used in the Quran, it's not addressing Muslims. When Muslims are addressed in the Quran, interestingly, it's not even usually the term Muslim that's used. When the Quran is referring specifically to followers of Muhammad, followers of the Quran, it usually uses the Arabic term mu'min, or the plural mu'minun, to mean specifically followers. It's a little confusing because this word literally translates usually as believers. It's usually how it's translated. And so if you say believer, you think believer in anything, right? You could be a believer in any religion or in, any school of thought. But the term that's translated usually as believers in the Quran is almost always referring very specifically to Muslims. And when it's referring to Jews and Christians, it will sometimes refer to them, as Jews or Christians, more rarely, but more commonly together as people of the book.